What's good?
Hey everyone.
What it do? What's poppin'? Her name is Ebony.
His name is Eugene.
And today's topic is stop blaming others for your life.
Stop blaming them.
3G, 3G, 3G. Yeah. I do what I do. I do what I do. You do it through me. 3G.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. So a lot of times, us as people, we can blame other people for why we're going through the situation that we're going through in our life. Like we can blame God, we could blame the enemy, we could blame our spouse, we could blame the next door neighbor, we could blame everybody. Like the list just goes on. But in certain scenarios, we have to acknowledge and take accountability for our own actions and what we're not doing. So some examples on blaming other people is, my marriage is really bad because my spouse does X, Y, Z, or my children are acting really horrible because that's just the way they are, or whatever it is, whatever your excuse is. Those are just a few examples on blaming other people.
Those are great examples. And it's very key that we don't play the victim when it comes to our own lives. Where we're at in life, what we're not at in life, what's going on in our lives, and what's not going on in our lives. A key thing that we should do is, instead of focusing on things that are outside of our control, let's put more focus on the things that we do have control of. So for example, we don't get to choose which family we're born into. Things just happen how they happen. But what we can control in that situation is evaluating, observing our family, seeing some of the pros and some of the cons, or at least things that we deem as pros and cons for whatever reason. And we can decide which of those things we continue to hold on to and to replicate in our lives, or the things we want to change in our lives, and also some of the things we just want to remove in general from our lives. And another example is we don't get to control a lot of the things that happen within our lives, as far as family deaths, parents splitting up, not knowing who our parents are, or not knowing who our family is, whether that be biological, or just any family in general. You never know someone's circumstances. But what we do get to control is how we respond to the situations and the scenarios that we find ourselves within. And of course, certain scenarios are going to be harder to process. It's going to be harder to grow through. It's going to be harder to use it to our benefit at the time of it happening, depending on what you're dealing with. And as we're going and growing through those situations, it's important to keep in mind it's always okay to get assistance when we need it. There's going to be certain things that happen that we're going to need help with, whether that be from a family member, a close friend, friends of the families, counselors, whatever that looks like for you.
Yes.
Utilize the resources that God has placed in your life to help you get through the situations and circumstances that we find ourselves in.
So a lot of times when you're blaming other people, that can either keep your situation the same or make your situation even worse than what it was.
It's always going to be easier to look at others and point out what they did, what they're not doing, or what they're doing wrong. But it's much more harder to look at ourselves.
Right.
To look within ourselves.
Definitely.
And see what we can be doing better, what we can be doing different,
right,
and what we can change within our situation. If you want to see change within your life, the greatest way to control how soon or how frequent that change comes is when we do it from within. When we take accountability of what we can control.
Right.
And make those changes.
Yeah, and stop making excuses.
Definitely. The longer we make those excuses, the longer it's going to take for us to see results and see things change within our lives.
And it's interesting when you start looking within yourself and you start changing things within yourself, you start to begin to realize that your situation starts to change because you're changing.
For me personally, This was something that I struggled with a lot growing up. I always looked at, what my parents weren't doing, what other parents were doing, other circumstances and situations I saw others in that I wasn't in, all these different things that I would look at and use those things to pretty much evaluate my life. And I noticed as I got older and just continued doing that, I did begin getting depressed. There was a lot of anger built in within. It could be the simplest things that could happen or not happen. I'd be upset. It could be something positive going on. I'd go out of my way to find the negatives. Oh, well, this didn't happen last year. They should have did it like this. They could have done it like that. And it just kept going and growing to the point to where I pretty much lost myself, lost my identity, lost track of the goals and things that I had set for myself, things that I wanted to accomplish. And I just lived in a world of negativity, a world of complaining, a world of pointing out that person's mistakes, this person's mistakes, all these other people's mistakes. But at the end of the day, none of that made me feel any better about myself, my situation, or my circumstances.
Right.
And as you stated, it didn't begin changing until I acknowledged that, till I took responsibility of where I was in my life, why I haven't accomplished all the things that I knew that I could have accomplished. It didn't start changing until I realized I was the reason. My mindset played a big part of the reason. Succumbing to my environment was a big part of the reason. Instead of looking at my environment and seeing the things that I didn't like, that wasn't conducive to anything positive, I duplicated a lot of it and did it in my own way. Not realizing I was just setting myself up for a longer return to get back to where I needed to be. But thankfully, all things do work in our favor, and was able to use those experiences to benefit our current situation and circumstances. And I can more so relate to those who were in that mindset that I was in, just stuck in that negative place, that I was in and I became so familiar with.
And I actually feel as though I went through a lot of what he went through as well. Some of the things that can be helpful for us is to ask ourselves questions. Ask ourselves questions like, how can I make this situation better? How did I contribute to the situation? What can I change about myself to help this situation? Really asking those personal questions to yourself, because that can help change your situation.
It'll help change your situation as well as changing you personally. Because as my wife said, some of the things that go in our life is out of our control, that has negative effects on us. But some of the things that have a negative impact on us, we chose to do.
Definitely.
We decided to do. We went out of our way to do this or do that, which led to this and that.
Reaping the consequences.
Reaping the consequences of our own decisions, our own actions, and there's a reaction for every action that takes place. So in order for us to see change within our lives, we need to make changes inside ourselves. We need to make changes in our decisions.
Yes.
Maybe changes in those who we hang out with.
Yes.
Maybe changes in the environments and the places that we dwell in.
Yes.
Changes within our mindsets.
Yes.
There's so many things that we can do to change the current and future outcomes of our lives. And that's what we should be focused on more so than the things that are out of our control.
Yes.
If you want to take control of your life.
And stop making excuses.
Couldn't have said it any better myself. So, with that being said, if you're feeling the vibe, like and subscribe. And if you ain't,
leave us a no excuse thumbs up.
that'll work. And we out.
Bye.